The time has come to bust the myth of UN-supplied facts. This council is being spoon-fed lies by the very same terrorist organization that deliberately murdered and maimed thousands of innocent Israelis just 34 days ago. Hamas has ensured that every square meter of Gaza is under their complete reign of terror. Many ambulances drivers are Hamas members. Local contributors to international media are Hamas members. We saw this week that innocent photojournalists for Reuters and the New York Times not only documented Hamas's horrors, but crossed into Israel to film them with the terrorists themselves. Hamas rules all of Gaza with an iron fist, and Hamas also rules all of the information coming out of the Strip. Just because briefings are written on official UN documents, it doesn't change the fact that the content was based on information supplied by Hamas. Hamas knows that this council ingests their poisonous falsehoods. This is part of their script. Their very own terror operatives give libelous information, which cannot be, sadly, verified by anyone other than Hamas to UN bodies. This information is passed on to UN officials, and then this information is used to brief you. Is it not concerning to you that in Dr. Tedros' briefing, not once did he mention Hamas exploitation of hospitals and ambulances for terror? Should this not raise a red flag? We are also being briefed by the Palestinian Director General of the Red Crescent. Yet, there is no Israeli representative of Magen David Adom, the Israeli Red Cross, briefing the Council. Is this not mind-boggling? Does this not reek of bias? Do Israeli lives matter less? Are the hostages, including women, children, toddlers, and the elderly, not worthy of this Council attention? How about the trauma of tens of thousands of Israelis? Or the thousands of wounded Israelis still being treated in hospitals? Or the hundreds of thousands of Israelis who have been forced to leave their homes since the massacre? Mr. Gilani, why don't you tell the Council about the ambulances that Hamas abuses for transporting terrorists and weapons? Or is this an inconvenient truth that you choose to stay silent about? When the parking lot of El Ahli Hospital was hit by a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket, the WHO jumped on the opportunity to falsely condemn Israel. Yet, even though it has been proven beyond a fraction of a doubt that Palestinian terrorists were responsible, no effort has been made by the WHO to change the label they immediately adopted. We all remember that within minutes of the Islamic Jihad rocket attack on El Ahli Hospital, the Hamas Ministry of Health immediately reported 500 fatalities. We now know that this number was a total lie, but still UN bodies still rely on such fabrications. Stop believing Hamas falsehoods, I beg you. Last week, we were shocked to hear Dr. Michael Ryan, the executive director of the WHO Health Emergency Program, call on Gazans to remain in hospitals that serve as Hamas terror bases. By adopting Hamas narrative of evil and telling patients to remain in an active war zone, the WHO prefers to endanger the lives of Palestinians rather than save them. What is even more shocking is that Dr. Rick Peppercorn, the WHO representative for Gaza, has until today refused to be briefed by Israel. We have urged Dr. Peppercorn numerous times to speak with us about the undeniable subterranean city of terror underneath Shifa Hospital, yet we received no answer. Instead, Dr. Peppercorn and WHO prefer to parrot Hamas lies while denying to speak to any Israeli experts. WHO teams have made it clear that they prefer to reward Hamas's strategy of exploiting hospitals, and by doing so, the WHO is directly complicit in giving impunity to this despicable practice. Dear colleagues, Israel is taking action to mitigate civilian casualty. We prefer to take proactive steps because, unlike Hamas and UN bodies, we cherish life and hold it sacred. This is why Israel is in advanced talks with the United Arab Emirates, with the ICRC, and with other European countries regarding the establishment of field hospitals and floating hospital ships. Israel facilitated the Jordanian airdrop of medical aid to hospitals in northern Gaza. Thousands of tons of medical equipment and supplies have already entered Gaza. Israel constantly shows that it is willing to take any step to evacuate the wounded from the war zone of northern Gaza to safer areas in the south. Sadly, Israel is doing far more for the well-being of Gazans than the WHO or any other UN body. Yet, this is not the focus of this meeting. If any UN official truly cared for Gazans, they would be working hand in hand with us to advance solutions, not condemn Israel for the measures taken to provide safety. Distinguished Council members, Hamas is supplying all of the information. I reiterate, Israeli experts are either ignored or baselessly mistrusted, and verified facts, including video, audio, and intelligence-based information, are deliberately omitted from your briefings. The words of genocidal terrorists are accepted at face value, while the irrefutable evidence of a law-abiding democracy is tossed aside. Tragically, the UN mechanisms have become terror enablers. We must no longer accept this. Colleagues, while Israel is at war with Hamas, and only with Hamas, we are also defending ourselves against murderers, numerous other terror threats: Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in Syria. These are all tentacles of the same genocidal octopus, Ayatollah regime in Iran. The Ayatollah has publicly praised the October 7th massacre, and Iran has armed, funded, and trained all of the terror groups attacking Israel. Nevertheless, the foreign minister of this murderous regime visited the UN only a week and a half ago and was given the red carpet treatment. He was loudly applauded in the General Assembly and even met with the Secretary General, who shook his hand with a big smile. The UN has completely lost its moral compass. This cannot be tolerated.
All right, we are going to take a quick break from this United Nations Security Council meeting for now. We are going to take a quick 2-minute break. We are going to pivot, take a quick look at the Take Care of Maya trial down in Tampa, Florida. We have a reporter on the ground with the latest on that situation. That's coming up next after a 2-minute break.
Site at weather.gov/Atlanta. The current time is 4:14 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The following reports of weather temperature. Atlanta, it was cloudy. 65 degrees. Relative humidity 87%. Wind west at 6 miles an hour. Pressure was 30.07 inches and steady.
Channel 2's Taisha Fernandez is live at the mall. And Taisha, just a whole lot of parking lot there behind you.
Wendy, at least someone is using this parking lot, right? If you take a look around, semi-trucks are everywhere, and this property has looked like this for the last 3 years since the mall closed down. Now, many people are excited about this turning into a mixed-use development, but people who already have apartments in the area just don't want their rent going up.
It's going to be beautiful. Yeah. I can't wait.
When North DeKalb Mall opened back in 1965, it was Atlanta's first fully enclosed shopping mall. But over the years, the way people shop changed, and this mall could not survive the pandemic.
I haven't been out to the mall in so long that I do my shopping online, too, so.
It closed in 2020 and became a parking lot for semi-trucks.
Awful. Awful. But, you know, they park in there because they can. So I don't blame them.
About 5 months ago, all the single stores on the outside of the mall had to pack up and go too.
We knew a year or so ago that we were going to have to move eventually.
A company called Edens bought the land. It plans to demolish the mall in the summer and have a mixed-use development here by 2025. These renderings show what it'll look like with restaurants, apartments, and stores. Thursday night, the Decide DeKalb Development Board unanimously voted for the approval of Eden's redevelopment proposal, which means the county is giving the company a $70 million tax break to make sure the area is revitalized.
Well, anything to keep it from looking so run down, just to bring some new business back and hopefully to give new jobs and people the opportunity to have some fun.
And now that I tell you what they're going to do, what do you think?
I think that's fun. It may add to the traffic, but what's another 50 cars?
Now, the people who do not want their rent going up, they don't mind the traffic so much, but what they are excited about is all the new jobs this development will bring. We're live in DeKalb County in North DeKalb. Taisha Fernandez, Channel 2 Action News.
Now to a developing story in DeKalb County. After a deadly shooting that left one person dead, it's called a quiet neighborhood. Yeah, that's watching a home security camera that captured two people running from the scene of the shooting on Bear Mountain Street. Authorities say a 20-year-old man was shot and killed outside the neighborhood clubhouse. One neighbor tells Channel 2 Action News that she is now scared for her safety.
I am very much on edge. I have two sons that are in their early 20s, and I just don't want to see anything happen to them either.
Right now, DeKalb police are not talking about a motive here. We have reached out to them to learn more. We're going to update you once we get a response.
There is a new ban for burning in the North Georgia mountains after the extreme drought has led to wildfires. The Rabun County Sheriff made the announcement. The ban goes into effect in just about 20 minutes, or rather in about 40 minutes at 5 o'clock. It's scheduled until Thursday, November 23rd at 5 p.m. So this means no burning leaves, tree limbs, or other yard waste. The wildfire on Highway 157 in Walker County is now 99% contained. Investigators say someone intentionally set that fire, which ended up burning 706 acres. The Georgia Forestry Commission says bulldozers and personnel are patrolling and monitoring the fire due to leaf fall, which could lead to areas reigniting.
The city of Sandy Springs is honoring veterans ahead of Veterans Day. They dedicated a new park to the men and women who answered the call to serve. Channel 2 Steve Gelbach shows us what makes this park so special.
They cut the outside part of the ceremony a little short because of this wet weather, but we're right across Roswell Road from the Performing Arts Center, where these new fountains in the Veterans Park mirror those across the street in this plaza here tucked right in between Johnson Ferry Road and Mount Vernon Highway. And it does include benches, flags, a lot of new landscaping. Before the dedication, though, hundreds of veterans, citizens, law enforcement, city leaders gathered inside for the 14th Annual Veterans Day tribute, emceed by our own and former WSB anchor John Pruitt. Then everyone moved over to the park. Also includes here a memorial plaza. And we spoke with the mayor how this was going to be called Gateway Park. Then they decided to make it that tribute for veterans. And I asked one Navy vet what this means for the city and all veterans in Sandy Springs.
It gives me goosebumps. It's wonderful. Long overdue. Long overdue. I love it.
The new Veterans Park includes this memorial court with a monument for each of the 6 branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and Space Force. And this is not complete. There are 2 special pieces of artwork that will be dedicated a year from today on Veterans Day 2024. One is a bronze statue of a veteran holding a flag in one arm, the hand of a little girl in the other, and another huge flame statue you can walk in and around. Again, that's coming a year from now. In Sandy Springs, Steve Gelbach, Channel 2 Action News.
There are veterans events happening all across Metro Atlanta tomorrow. We have put together a list for you. You find it right now at WSBTV.com or the WSB TV News app.
The Fulton County School Board will not be needing a new superintendent, at least not for a bit. This week, the board voted to extend its contract with Superintendent Mike Looney. That contract is expected to last through November 9th of 2026. His new contract projects a 7-year tenure, which is rare for a superintendent in a large metro Atlanta school district.
Dangers of street racing can change someone's life in seconds.
I hear this whirring noise, and I look, and it looks like a bullet train coming towards me.
New at 4, how this survivor is fighting to make sure other drivers aren't caught in the middle.
This sounds good. You may get to keep more of your money when you file taxes next year. Inflation is changing how the IRS calculates your bill.
And be careful when you buy your holiday gifts. If you use the country's most popular shopping app, Temu, you may never get your items. We'll talk about it next.
Covering Duluth's biggest stories, Channel 2 Action News.
City, it was partly sunny. 66 degrees, dew point 61, relative humidity 84%. Wind calm. Pressure was 30.08 inches and rising. Anniston, it was cloudy. 62 degrees, dew point 59, relative humidity 90%. Wind north at 8 miles an hour. Pressure was 30.09 inches and rising. Elsewhere around the region, Rome, it was partly sunny, 61 degrees, wind north at 9 miles an hour. Chattanooga, it was partly sunny, 58 degrees, wind northeast at 12 miles an hour. Gainesville, it was partly sunny, 64 degrees, wind west at 8 miles an hour. Athens, it was cloudy, 63 degrees, wind calm. Macon, it was cloudy, 73 degrees, wind west at 3 miles an hour. Columbus, light rain was falling, 68 degrees, wind calm. Birmingham, it was cloudy, 59 degrees, wind north at 7 miles an hour. Huntsville, it was cloudy, 62 degrees, wind north at 13 miles an hour. Here is the hazardous weather outlook. This hazardous weather outlook is for portions of north and central Georgia. For today and tonight, no hazardous weather is expected at this time. And now the extended outlook for the period Saturday through Thursday. No hazardous weather is expected at this time. Spotter information statement. Spotter activation will not be needed through tonight. Here is the official forecast from your National Weather Service for the West Central Georgia listening area. Tonight, a chance of showers early, then showers likely after midnight. Lows in the lower 50s. North winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Chance of rain 70%. Veterans Day, cloudy with a 50% chance of showers. Highs in the upper 50s. Northeast winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Saturday night, showers. Near steady temperature around 50. East winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Chance of rain 80%. Sunday, showers likely, mainly in the morning. Highs in the mid-50s. Temperature falling in the lower 50s in the afternoon. East winds 10 to 20 miles an hour. Chance of rain 60%. Sunday night, mostly cloudy. Lows in the lower 40s. East winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. And now the extended forecast. Monday and Monday night, mostly cloudy. A slight chance of showers. Highs in the lower 60s. Lows in the mid-40s. Tuesday and Tuesday night, mostly cloudy with a 50% chance of showers. Highs around 60. Lows in the mid-40s. Wednesday and Wednesday night, showers likely. Highs in the upper 50s. Lows in the upper 40s. Thursday and Thursday night, mostly cloudy with a 30% chance of showers. Highs in the lower 60s. Lows.
Buy from their link, which they then get an award for doing.
But will you get what you expect? Earlier this year, consumer blogger Andrea Warrock did some test shopping with Temu. She ordered this white children's shelf for her kid's room. It arrived within a week and was exactly what she ordered. But believes the company is now having trouble keeping up, and she's heard stories about many disappointed shoppers.
The problem isn't necessarily on the quality, although you do want to pay attention to that and just be aware of that. It's that they're having major issues with shipping and delivery.
Almost everything is on the site, from women's clothes for as little as $1.47 to earbuds for $10. However, lots of customers mean there will be complaints. The BBB has received nearly 1,000 complaints about Temu in the past 12 months.
Most of what we're hearing is just quality control or customer service issues. Just know that if you're buying something for $2 that may be $8 or $10 with other competitors, there's going to be a difference in quality.
And don't expect a speedy delivery because nearly everything on Temu ships from China. Temu is technically based in Boston, but it is owned by Pinduoduo, a Chinese-based e-commerce site. This brief by a U.S. government commission on Temu expressed concerns that its sister Chinese site has had issues with data security and malware just within the past year.
A man says he was set on fire while he was at this gas station, and he says it would not have happened if the gas station had security. I have that story coming up.
For the first time ever, doctors have transplanted an entire eye into another person.
Most people didn't even expect we would get here. This is just the beginning.
New at 4, how the patient is doing after this medical breakthrough.
Look at this live look over Midtown, overcast with some drizzle. Yeah, that's a preview of what I expect we're going to be looking at for much of the weekend. Right now, we're looking at rain, just light, and I'll show you these rainfall totals and the timeline coming up.
Here's the hazardous weather outlook. This hazardous weather outlook gives proportions of north and central.
In fighting that Israel has agreed to. What does that mean for people in Israel and the region? What does that mean for hostages as well in Gaza?
First of all, let's understand what we are talking about. Israel agreed to 4-hour pause on different location every day. We do not announce the location in advance, only 3 hours in advance, so that the Hamas will not take advantage and prevent from Gazan people to move in the humanitarian corridor from the northern part to the southern part. We're trying to minimize the casualties on the Palestinian side, and we do the most as we can to prevent civilian casualties. However, the Hamas is trying to prevent them moving to the northern side, which is a safe zone, and they want to use them as a human shield to stop the Israeli military operation. We're not going to let it happen, so we do it on a daily basis. We monitor it, and we make sure that the Hamas will not take advantage and prevent from Gazan people to move to the northern side.
Now, we know that there's roughly 240 Hamas hostages in Gaza right now. 10 of them are believed to be Americans. What are you hearing from hostage families about this pause? My understanding is that you're in touch with families in Southern California.
Yes. First, it's very natural for any family that the relatives are being held by the Hamas not to like the fact that Israel is doing any humanitarian gesture, etc. Of course, they look at it from a very emotional and very personal point of view, and we do understand it, and we do hug the families, and we understand their pain. We're trying to do the most that we can to help them. However, in running the war right now, the war cabinet in Israel decided to create these 4-hour pauses. In the end of the day, these 4 hours pauses will help us to make sure that all the northern part of Gaza, where we are basically doing the military actions and fighting, will be cleared of civilians. That's what we're trying to do. So that's goal number 1. Goal number 2 is to prevent any humanitarian crises. And goal number 3 is the fact that after these areas are going to be clear from civilians, the IDF will be able to operate even more forcefully and more effectively.
You talk about some of the dangers presented in the northern part of Israel. I know you were born
The day widespread, mainly light. Let me show you where the rain is now and where it's headed and when more is headed in. Right now we've got some isolated light showers down towards Griffin, Macon, Eatonton, up towards Athens, across the lake country. Just some showers and sprinkles. Where it's not raining, though, we do have some spots of mist, and there'll be more of that, much more of that as we head into and through the weekend. Here's a look at the radar estimates of the rainfall amounts. They're pretty slim, 1/10 of an inch or less, but notice everybody has gotten in on the action over the last 24 hours, really most of this in the last 12 hours. So it's a small step in the right direction as far as chipping away at our increasing drought. So this area of rain starting to taper off, more developing towards the west that'll be building in, and in between we'll keep the clouds and those spots of mist and drizzle. That's a live look at Hartsfield-Jackson. Remember, the drought has been expanding. This is a look at it adding up or getting worse over the last month and 2.5 months since September 1st. And this is the current drought situation. Exceptional drought here in northwest Georgia. Then the brighter red, that's extreme drought. The orange, that's drought also. In fact, it extends back down towards the south. So you go from severe to moderate. Bottom line is, we've got increasing drought conditions across metro Atlanta and North Georgia, and this rain is helping. We will have periods of rain through the weekend, breezy as well, and it'll be much cooler than those low 80s we have had through much of this week. Here's a forecast map. Overcast sky stays with us. We'll have some spots of light rain and drizzle increasing a bit as we head into the night. But watch this. This cool east-northeasterly wind, that's going to start to surge in through this evening and continue through the night. We'll have more widespread, still light to moderate rain across much of the area to start the weekend. This is Saturday morning. As we head into the afternoon, we'll start to see that taper off after about 3 p.m. So if you've got plans to head to Athens for the game, the widespread rain I expect will be over late afternoon and through the game, but there'll still be the chance for some passing showers. But outside of that, we're going to have mist and drizzle. It's going to be breezy, cool and damp all weekend, even when it is not raining. And what I'm highlighting here for Sunday morning is widespread, very light rain and drizzle. Much of this lightest shade of green is actually just that drizzle. And we'll keep that cool east-northeasterly wind. That's going to hold our temperatures down into the 50s all weekend. And then by Sunday afternoon, that starts to taper off again. So your 5-day forecast with the weekend always in view looks like this. We'll have periods of rain off and on through the weekend. Outside of the rain, though, we'll have drizzle. It'll be overcast, breezy, and cool all weekend. Drying out Monday. Some showers back in the forecast late Tuesday and into Wednesday. Back to the mid-50s Wednesday afternoon. Fish and game forecast for your Saturday. Up and down several times. Pretty good peak just after midday at 12:20.
Developing now, a man says he was set on fire while talking to a woman at a gas station. Larry Lane was burned over 75% of his body, and he spent months in the hospital. Channel 2's Tom Jones is live now in Clayton County. And Tom, he told you that gas station needs to do a better job at protecting its customers.
Yeah, Wendy, Larry Lane's attorney says police have been called to this gas station nearly 200 times over a 2-year period. He says they were called here for his client after a man attacked him, then pulled out a lighter and set him on fire.
The feeling, the flames, the sound of the fire, you know, it was sad.
It pains Larry Lane to think about the moment a man set him on fire.
Did you think you were going to die?
Oh, definitely, especially when I woke up.
Lane was in a coma after he suffered burns over 75% of his body. He spent 7 months in the hospital. Still, he clearly remembers the moment his attacker tried to kill him.
He took out his lighter. He knew that I was covered with gas, so he made that decision to light me up.
Lane says he ran out of gas that night in July last year. He says he put gas in a bottle, and as he walked back to his car, he saw a woman he knew at this BP on Mount Zion Road. They started talking.
I guess whoever she was with, the guy, he was over there, he woke up.
Lane says the man got out of his car and began punching the woman, then attacked him.
The gas spilling everywhere, and then he looked at me and he just, Look me up.
This could have easily been prevented if there was an armed security guard on the premises.
Lane's attorney, Reginald Green, says he learned there had been 185 911 calls to the store in the 2 years before the attack,
including robberies, suspicious persons, demented persons.
Gas Express, which owns the gas station, said it couldn't comment right now. Meanwhile, Lane says his body will never be the same. He's still seeing doctors.
And the scary part is they haven't found the guy.
And I asked police about that. I asked them if they've been able to identify a suspect, if they've been able to get the surveillance video from this gas station to help identify an attacker. They say they will get back to me on all of that. Meanwhile, Lane's attorney says he doesn't want this to happen to anyone else and is considering legal action. We're live in Clayton County. Tom Jones, Channel 2 Action News.
So Atlanta city leaders, they voted to require higher quality cameras at gas stations back in August. That rule takes effect next year. That ordinance is similar to the one approved to oversee the nearly 250 stations and convenience stores in DeKalb County.
A Florida Sheriff's Department releases dramatic video of an attack on 2 of its deputies. The video's kind of graphic, so be careful if you're watching with kids. 2 Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputies were on a call Thursday. They responded. A woman said her adult son was acting irrational and violent. When deputies tried to talk to the young man, he drove away. Minutes later, as the deputies stood by the patrol car, he returned and hit both of them.
Our agency has been rocked today. Fortunately, we won't be planning a funeral, regardless of how intended and determined this suspect was to take a deputy's life.
The deputies were airlifted to the hospital where one of them had to have a leg amputated. As you can imagine, the suspect is now facing multiple charges.
New at 4 o'clock, changes are coming to federal taxes next year, and you could be placed in a new tax bracket. The IRS boosted the income thresholds for each bracket to account for inflation. It means some people could benefit by being able to remain in a lower tax bracket. However, the standard deduction will increase for both married couples filing jointly and single filers. A woman says her life changed forever after a street racer hit her.
Before I knew it, he hit me, slammed me into a wall, and then I started spinning.
She's telling us about her fight to make sure reckless drivers are held accountable.
A pit bull dog attacks 2 dogs and their owner in Cobb County. New at 5, why the victim says local animal control is not giving them the answers they're looking for.
Becoming a millionaire by the time you retire is possible. Channel 2 consumer advisor Clark Howard shows you how. That's next.
Portions of
Welcome back into Live Now from Fox. I'm Austin Westfall. We want to continue our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. for that, we do want to check in with our correspondents that are down in the field. Alex Hogan brings us this report from Israel.
Intense bombardments and street battles now taking place near a number of hospitals. The fighting continues to intensify as Israeli troops push deeper into Gaza City. Intense bombardments and street battles now taking place near a number of hospitals, with Hamas increasingly using civilians as a de facto human shield. As the battle rages on, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is doubling down on his suggestion that Israel could be in control of Gaza indefinitely, reportedly telling officials in southern Israel he won't put his trust in, quote, international forces.
There is a very great determination to restore security, to make sure that there is no Hamas and that Hamas does not return, but also to make sure that there will be a strong life after.
Meanwhile, for the second straight day, Israel has put a humanitarian pause in place. Officials here call it a tactical pause, stopping the fighting for 6 hours to allow more aid to get in and civilians to get out. But the Israelis are still rejecting calls for a longer ceasefire.
People have to understand it. It is a matter of life and death to Israelis. We will not accept any kind of talking about a ceasefire. We don't have this privilege.
And the aid trickling in is desperately needed. Some civilians in Gaza now saying even if they survive the airstrikes, they'll die of epidemics and diseases.
Our children suffer from all the diseases that you can imagine: diarrhea, vomiting, fever. There is no medicine, there is no food, and there are no blankets either.
On Friday, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said the Palestinian Authority is ready to step in and govern Gaza whenever the fighting stops. In northern Israel, Alex Hogan, Fox News.
Alex, thank you. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., a ongoing pro-Palestinian rally happening in New York City. This is a live image. Our photojournalist on the ground clearly moving around a little bit, trying to get the best vantage point possible as we continue listening in. We were listening in on this about 30 minutes ago as some speakers were talking in front of this audience. Let's pump up the audio, see what's happening now.
Which means you're going to get a bigger camera. Of course.
A little difficult to hear some of the speakers at that event, but we do know that the event is called Flood Manhattan for Gaza. We have seen large turnouts at some of these rallies over the past few weeks. Given that it is a Friday, one can only surmise people may be hitting the streets. Once again, we have seen some very busy protests taking over the streets of New York City in some occasions. Seeing the same thing in Washington, D.C., and we've seen similar scenarios in major cities really across the world. Paris, France, you name it. I mean, we've seen rallying cries, pro-Palestinian, pro-Israel. We have seen this one called Flood Manhattan for Gaza, no doubt referring to the immense amount of civilians that are within Gaza city limits. This event starting at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so it's been going on for roughly 45 minutes now. Our understanding is that in about 15 minutes, so that would be at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, that's when this rally is going to start. What's happening right now, they call this a 4 p.m. teach-in. So once this teach-in is over, in about 15 minutes, we will be watching to see what exactly this rally looks like in New York City. This is a pro-Palestinian rally. You see no shortage of those Palestinian flags as we continue to watch that feed. We will continue to watch that feed as that event progresses. We are going to go away for another quick commercial break. More coverage on the Israel-Hamas conflict when we return. Welcome back into Live Now. I'm Austin Westfall. We love to bring you these live events as they come into our newsroom. If you were watching us just before the break, we're going to take you back out to New York City where this pro-Palestinian rally is still happening. This is a live image, so if you see our video journalist on the ground there making some moves, it's because this is live. This is an unfiltered feed that we're looking at out of New York City. There have been moments throughout this event where we have been able to hear these speakers talking to this crowd. Let's listen in. Let's see what we can hear right now. All right, tough to hear what exactly the speakers are saying at this point during the rally. The actual rally itself, this is just the teach-in. This is the introduction portion of this rally. The actual rally is going to be starting in roughly 15 minutes, 5 p.m. Eastern time. This is happening in New York City. Lots of those Palestinian flags, and we have another vantage point of New York City. Look at this shot. This is just about as golden hour as it gets. This is that pretty pink clouds and some nice shining lights on the Empire State Building and the Big Apple. This is a very gorgeous look. We look at this shot quite often on Live Now. It's not every day that we see it looking quite this pretty, but we do also have a number of live looks. If I do have to say so myself, maybe not so much of a pretty shot of the Statue of Liberty. Statue of Liberty there, not golden hour it appears in that shot, but we do have some fall foliage to show off as far as the White House goes. We have been checking in on a lot of our feeds, including this live event that's happening right now at the United Nations. This is a National Security Council meeting having to do with what they call the Palestinian question. Basically what that means is a lot of these ambassadors from different nations are speaking, are stepping up to the podium. They are speaking about this Israel-Hamas conflict, some of the strategies involved, and some of the decision-making that goes into making these bigger moves. We did hear from Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. He was speaking a little bit earlier about not only this conflict, but the future of it as well. We want to play out those remarks right now. This is probably this took place about an hour ago. This is Israel's ambassador. Let's listen in.
Raise a red flag. We are also being briefed by the Palestinian Director General of the Red Crescent. Yet, there is no Israeli representative of Magen David Adom, the Israeli Red Cross, briefing the Council. Is this not mind-boggling? Does this not reek of bias? Do Israeli lives matter less? Are the hostages, including women, children, toddlers, and the elderly, not worthy of this Council's attention? How about the trauma of tens of thousands of Israelis? Or the thousands of wounded Israelis still being treated in hospitals? Or the hundreds of thousands of Israelis who have been forced to leave their homes since the massacre? Mr. Gilani, why don't you tell the Council about the ambulances that Hamas abuses for transporting terrorists and weapons? Or is this an inconvenient truth that you choose to stay silent about? When the parking lot of El Akhli Hospital was hit by a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket, the WHO jumped on the opportunity to falsely condemn Israel. Yet, even though it has been proven beyond a fraction of a doubt that Palestinian terrorists were responsible, no effort has been made by the WHO to change the label they immediately adopted. We all remember that within minutes of the Islamic Jihad rocket attack on El Akhli Hospital, the Hamas Ministry of Health immediately reported 500 fatalities. We now know that this number was a total lie, but still UN bodies still rely on such fabrications. Stop believing Hamas falsehoods, I beg you. Last week, we were shocked to hear Dr. Michael Ryan, the executive director of the WHO Health Emergency Program, call on Gazans to remain in hospitals that serve as Hamas terror bases. By adopting Hamas narrative of evil and telling patients to remain in an active war zone, the WHO prefers to endanger the lives of Palestinians rather than save them. What is even more shocking is that Dr. Rick Peppercorn, the WHO representative for Gaza, has until today refused to be briefed by Israel. We have urged Dr. Peppercorn numerous times to speak with us about the undeniable subterranean city of terror underneath Shifa Hospital, yet we received no answer. Instead, Dr. Peppercorn and WHO prefer to parrot Hamas lies while denying to speak to any Israeli experts. WHO teams have made it clear that they prefer to reward Hamas's strategy of exploiting hospitals, and by doing so, the WHO is directly complicit in giving impunity to this despicable practice. Dear colleagues, Israel is taking action to mitigate civilian casualty. We prefer to take proactive steps because, unlike Hamas and UN bodies, we cherish life and hold it sacred. This is why Israel is in advanced talks with the United Arab Emirates, with the ICRC, and with other European countries regarding the establishment of field hospitals and floating hospital ships. Israel facilitated the Jordanian airdrop of medical aid to hospitals in northern Gaza. Thousands of tons of medical equipment and supplies have already entered Gaza. Israel constantly shows that it is willing to take any step to evacuate the wounded from the war zone of northern Gaza to safer areas in the south. Sadly, Israel is doing far more for the well-being of Gazans than the WHO or any other UN body. Yet, this is not the focus of this meeting. If any UN official truly cared for Gazans, they would be working hand in hand with us to advance solutions, not condemn Israel for the measures taken to provide safety. Distinguished Council members, Hamas is supplying all of the information. I reiterate, Israeli experts are either ignored or baselessly mistrusted, and verified facts, including video, audio, and intelligence-based information, are deliberately omitted from your briefings. The words of genocidal terrorists are accepted at face value, while the irrefutable evidence of a law-abiding democracy is tossed aside. Tragically, the UN mechanisms have become terror enablers. We must no longer accept this. Colleagues, while Israel is at war with Hamas, and only with Hamas, we are also defending ourselves against murderers, numerous other terror threats. Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in Syria. These are all tentacles of the same genocidal octopus, Ayatollah regime in Iran. The Ayatollah has publicly praised the October 7th massacre, and Iran has armed, funded, and trained all of the terror groups attacking Israel. Nevertheless, the foreign minister of this murderous regime visited the UN only a week and a half ago and was given the red carpet treatment. He was loudly applauded in the General Assembly and even met with the Secretary General, who shook his hand with a big smile. The UN has completely lost its moral compass. This cannot be tolerated. Mr. President, Israel is fighting a war for her very future and existence. We are combating a genocidal Nazi-like terror organization. Hamas has publicly declared that they will carry out further atrocities if they are given the chance. The only way to ensure that these horrors are never repeated again is by eliminating Hamas capabilities. And this is the realization of our collective oath of never again. Israel will continue targeting Hamas while working towards solutions for Gazan civilians. This should be the focus of this meeting and not anything else. Thank you, Mr. President.
I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I now give the floor to the representative of the UAE.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to also thank you in leading us in a moment of silence for the lives lost in Israel and the OPT. By now, we've all heard the acronym coined by health workers in Gaza, WCNSF, which stands for Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. I just want to let that sink in as we discuss today's topic. Dr. Tedros and Dr. Jelani, I want to pay tribute to both of you, not only for making time to brief this council, but also for the life-saving work you and your teams do on the ground in very, very difficult circumstances, and your clarion call to this council today that must be heeded. Today, I also want to pay tribute to the silent heroes in the medical community in Gaza who stayed behind to deliver life-saving assistance despite these horrific circumstances. Just moments ago, many of us received messages from medical and humanitarian organizations about the heavy fighting around the Al-Shifa hospital. Medical staff tell us that they're in fear of their lives and the lives of their patients being taken, and they do not know if they will make it until the morning. Mr. President, it sometimes feels that by only dealing with the numbers from the conflict, we are indeed denying the humanity of those suffering. While it is impossible for us to go through the thousands of stories in today's meeting, I want to put a couple of faces to those numbers. Not of Hamas fighters, normal people. And Israel may be at war with Hamas, but those paying the price of this war are civilians in the thousands. Let me start with Ala Zahir Ahmed, who's in her third year of medical school. She grew up in Khan Yunis refugee camp. On the 10th of October, she was designing a poster for breast cancer awareness when the windows started shaking and everything turned black. An Israeli airstrike leveled her home, pinning her legs under the wreckage and leaving barely enough oxygen to breathe. Hours later, Ala's relatives and rescue workers pulled her from the rubble. They also recovered the lifeless bodies of her mother, her brother, and her nephew. And there are so many stories like this one. I feel the need to remind the Council that, like Ala, every single one of the 2,650 currently reported as trapped under the rubble are human beings, and that more than half of them are children. But they're not just children, they're Palestine's future, and they're also Israel's future neighbors. And we should spare no effort to protect them and save both peoples from this road of war that we are on. Born in Al-Shifa Hospital on 6th October is Talia, whose fragile heartbeat depends on a mechanical ventilator, straining generators, and dwindling fuel supply. With the strike on the hospital last night and reports of the desperate...
Homeowners in Cobb County are left feeling helpless. They say a neighbor's pit bull attacked their dogs again.
Now I've been told 2 humans have to be bit in 2 separate instances for something to be done.
New at 5, why they say animal control won't remove the dog that's terrorizing their neighborhood.
Plus, federal investigators intercept a letter possibly laced with fentanyl sent to the Fulton County Elections Office. We're live on everything we know about the active investigation.
Live, local, late-breaking. This is Channel 2 Action News at 5 p.m. Coverage you can count on.
Thanks so much for joining us on this Friday. I'm Karen Greer.
And I'm George Estevez. Lots to get to now. First, though, we're going to take a look at your forecast because it's expected to get chilly out there. Chief Meteorologist Brad Nitz is in Severe Weather Center 2 tracking what's happening now.
Yeah, mid-60s now, much cooler than we've been through much of the week, but much warmer than we're going to be this weekend. Live look at Hartsfield-Jackson, overcast sky. There's the control tower, of course. And the rain that came through earlier today, much of that has now moved east and south of the metro area, but there's more rain developing back towards the west. So a little bit of a lull, a little break in the action right now. But where it's not raining, we still have some spots of mist and drizzle. We'll keep overcast sky, a few showers, and mainly drizzle and mist as we head through the evening and into the night. Temperatures falling back to and into the mid-50s by 11 o'clock. Here's what you need to know about the weather on the way as we head into the weekend. There will be periods of rain, but not a total rainout. So I'll take you through that timeline. When we'll be wet, when we'll be dry, and look ahead towards much cooler temperatures in the 50s all weekend. We'll break down that updated 5-day forecast for you coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, Brett, thanks. Let's get to that breaking news we're following for you. Federal agents intercepted a suspicious letter this afternoon before it arrived at the Fulton County elections offices. That's in Fairburn. That letter is believed to be similar to letters sent to elections offices in 4 western U.S. states. Channel 2's Richard Elliott is live outside the elections office in Fairburn with the latest on this catch. Richard, you have been asking questions about this all day.
And multiple sources now, including the Georgia Secretary of State's office, confirmed that federal agents intercepted that letter before it could arrive here at the Fulton Elections office. They won't say exactly where, only that they intercepted it at a Metro Atlanta postal facility. It's not long after that discovery, agents alerted officials both with Fulton County and the state of Georgia. Federal agents intercepted the suspicious letter at a Metro Atlanta postal facility Friday afternoon, though it wasn't clear if it was here at the Central Post Office in Hapeville. It's also not clear if the letter was laced with fentanyl or contained a white powder, as with other letters sent to election centers in 4 other states. In a statement, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said, quote, "Our federal law enforcement partners notified us this afternoon that the letter sent by domestic terrorists to the Fulton County Elections Office has been successfully intercepted." Thursday, Raffensperger demanded that politicians condemn this letter and the others too.
This is domestic terrorism, and it needs to be condemned by anyone that holds elected office and anyone that wants to hold elected office anywhere in America.
While agents haven't released many details, it's suspected to be similar to this one sent to an elections office in Oregon. Inside, a printed note which read, "End elections now," and "We are in charge now and there's no need for them," along with some far left-wing symbols. But retired FBI agent Daniel Bruner said that could be a ruse, particularly because they sent a letter to Fulton County, a county prosecuting former President Donald Trump and others.
My gut instinct says that it's a little bit too much of them trying to claim responsibility, and in fact that Fulton County was targeted as well specifically also leads me to believe that it could be.
Now, Raffensperger also thanked postal inspectors, the FBI, GEMA, Homeland Security, and the governor's office for their help in finding that letter. We are live in Fairburn. Richard Elliott, Channel 2 Action News.
We know suspicious letters have shown up in half a dozen states from Washington to Texas. And California, postal workers are using N95 masks. They also have Narcan spray on standby. While the FBI investigates the source, it says workers should take extra precautions while handling the mail.
New now at 5 o'clock, a family says their neighbor's pit bull attacked their 2 small dogs. They say the dog has attacked 3 times and even managed to get inside their house. Channel 2 Cobb County Bureau Chief Michelle Newell is in Marietta for us. So, Michelle, the family here, they want the pit bull taken away. But with everything, there's another side to the story.
And George, I got the other side to this story. The owner of the pit bull tells me their dog isn't dangerous and does just fine at dog parks. But the family inside this home, they disagree. They say their 2 small dogs were attacked. You can see some of the injuries there. They're keeping these next to their front door because they don't feel safe. This is pepper spray, a machete, and a pocket knife.
She's got about 10 puncture wounds. She's got one back here where the dog mauled her. Kona got
The first time.
basically locked in the dog's jaws.
The Rualdez family says their neighbor's pit bull caused these injuries. Both dogs got injured.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Surgeries, medical bills, everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of anxiety.
They say both dogs were injured in vicious attacks.
It was just traumatizing. I'm traumatized. My dogs are traumatized. This is the 3rd incident.
Amelia says the 3rd incident happened 2 days ago when the neighbor's child accidentally let the dog out the house.
The dog is right there, just started coming in my house, in the front door.
My wife fell down the steps, landed on the grass, and by that time, the dog once again had my other dog in its jaws.
I just started shaking, and I started screaming and kicking her and kicking and screaming.
Animal control cited the dog's owners, but this family says they want to see more action.
Put the dog down. It's a dangerous and vicious dog.
I talked to the dog's owners to get their side of the story.
Gerardo, is your dog dangerous?
No, it's not. He's aggressive towards other, let's say,
certain animals, I don't know why.
They brought their dog, Blue, out of the house for us. She didn't come my way. The family says they've noticed Blue is more protective now that there's a child around the house.
The incidents we've had, you know, we've tried to communicate with them. We've tried to take care, like I said, take care of their vet bills. We have had paid more attention to her not being able to get out or when we put her in the backyard.
They have received citations, and there is a pending court date. A judge could require the surrender and or euthanization of the dog or just issue fines. But the family that owns these two dogs, they told me they really feel like they're out of options and there's nothing to do to get rid of their neighbor's dog. This is more complex than you think it is. We're breaking down the laws in the next hour. Live from Cobb County, Michelle Newell, Channel 2 Action News.
Now, a developing story, a young woman's life cut short by gun violence. Tonight, the suspect is facing charges. The Fulton County Jail sent us this photo of 22-year-old Ja'Cory Eccles. He's accused of murdering 21-year-old Cameron Price. Channel 2's Michael Seidens live outside the Fulton County Jail. Michael, you've learned the suspect has actually been in trouble before.
Yeah, you know, Karen, we checked jail records. In fact, he was just here in May on unrelated charges. He bonds out in August. Then he gets sent to prison. It's a mess, but this guy has an extensive criminal history, and he's now accused of murder. Nearly 8 months after the shooting death of 21-year-old Cameron Price, Atlanta police say they are one step closer to getting her family justice. On Friday, investigators announced the arrest of 22-year-old Ja'Cory Eccles. The DeKalb County man is charged with murder after police say he fired the deadly shots that killed the South Carolina native who had been in town visiting her friends when her life was cut short by gun violence back in April. Now, detectives haven't released a motive, but on the night of the shooting, they told us that Cameron and her friends had just left the Magic City Strip Club in Southwest Atlanta. That's when another car pulled up on them and started firing shots into their SUV. The gunfire critically injured Cameron, who was rushed to the hospital where she was pronounced dead. As police worked to identify the gunman, jail records show Ja'Cory Eccles was accused of committing additional crimes, seen here in this bookend sheet. He would spend most of the summer in jail before he would post bond. But he wouldn't remain free for very long. That's because his arrest in May was a violation of his probation after he was convicted of committing financial crimes in Cobb County in 2019. Now he's back in jail while the family of this young woman says they're still desperate for answers. Yeah, we'd reached out to the family, talked to them by phone. We were going to do an interview, but they just said they're not ready to talk yet. Of course, we will respect their privacy. Now, as far as that suspect, we reached out to the attorney listed on his bookend sheet. So far, he hasn't returned our calls. We'll keep you posted. For now, we're live in Northwest Atlanta. Michael Seiden, Channel 2 Action News.
In the Israel-Hamas war today, airstrikes on Gaza's biggest hospital killed a person and wounded others sheltering there. That's according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry. Channel 2's Wendy Corona live for us now in our satellite news center. Wendy, there's video of the strike.
There sure is, George, and the video that we're about to show you is from just one hospital, in fact, the largest. There were a total of 4 struck as Israeli troops battled Hamas in the heart of the enclave.
If there is a hell on earth today, its name is northern Gaza.
This video shows the moment an unidentified projectile hit the parking lot of the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City. The lot had become a makeshift refugee camp for hundreds of people displaced by the fighting. A doctor at the hospital says those who were able left the hospital after the airstrike, and only a small number of staff and patients remain. This man fled with his mother, saying, "We saw death with our own eyes." The IDF says it does not shoot at hospitals, and if there are Hamas terrorists in them, it will do what it needs to. The militant group and hospital staff deny that. The Israeli Defense Forces also of the 7th Brigade conducting raids on a Hamas military post and a training compound. They was located in the heart of civilian areas. The IDF claims the soldiers secured buildings and seized dozens of weapons and killed 30 Hamas fighters. Despite the relentless targeting of Hamas by the IDF, the militant group continues to launch missiles into Israel.
Around 2 o'clock, there was a siren in Tel Aviv. There was 2 places we got a rocket ratchet.
So we've learned Saudi Arabia will host an emergency summit of Arab and Islamic nations in Riyadh tomorrow to discuss this conflict. One of the goals is to pressure the U.S. to do more to reach a ceasefire agreement. For now, live in the Satellite News Center, Wendy Corona, Channel 2 Action News.
This is Tom Regan aboard the USS George Washington. You know, with so much uncertainty in the Middle East, we are talking with Georgia sailors about the role they're playing to protect and serve around the world.
The future of North DeKalb Mall, what the company that owns the property has permission to do, and how it will impact this community.
A warning's been issued after 9 people overdosed outside a Gwinnett County bar. What we're learning about the drug that they're suspected of consuming.
Context here for our viewers. This is another large-scale pro-Palestinian rally and march that is happening right now in Columbus Circle in New York City. This is following a night of rallies across parts of Midtown Manhattan. According to an Instagram post, this event was slated to start 12 minutes ago to protest Israel's war in Gaza and support Palestinians. The goal here, they say, is to flood Manhattan for Gaza. The expected Columbus Circle rally comes after thousands of New York City students, teachers, and staff took to the streets of Manhattan yesterday. The Palestinian Youth Movement and other groups have called for people to walk out of their workplaces, schools, or other activities to join this rally. Now, after an initial rally in Bryant Park, a large group of protesters moved to the New York Times building on 8th Avenue yesterday, where a small group staged a sit-in at the offices of the New York Times before heading to Times Square. New York City has been a hotspot for these types of events, especially since October 7th, as this war rages on. When we first checked in on this event about an hour and 15 minutes ago, that would have been 4 p.m. Eastern Time, this crowd was much smaller. It was a small gathering of pro-Palestinian marchers, but as you see, this crowd only growing in strength and size as the night progresses and as the sun goes down in the Big Apple. It's hard to make out what those chants are, but what we typically hear during these events are protesters demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. We hear quite often accusations against the media of showing bias toward Israel and its coverage of the war. You see that one sign discussing the collateral damage of some of these military strikes. A topic that is going to continue being relevant as we continue to watch the Gaza skyline, as we have been watching the Gaza skyline. The Gaza skyline right now is dark, but we have seen a number of large blasts taking place over Gaza today. There was one particular 5-minute period, I would say, roughly 2 to 3 hours ago, where we saw some massive explosions over Gaza. We saw massive explosions over Gaza. We've seen a number of flares over Gaza, as is custom, day in and day out, over the night sky in Gaza. But the shot you're looking at right now, we're going to reset here. This is a pro-Palestinian rally That's been happening in New York City for the past hour and 15 minutes. But really within the past 15 or 20 minutes is when this thing has really started to grow in size. This is another large-scale pro-Palestinian rally after yesterday's rallies that were also happening in parts of Midtown Manhattan. According to an Instagram post, this rally started 15 minutes ago, and it is intended to protest Israel's war in Gaza in support of Palestinians. The event is called Flood Manhattan for Gaza. This Columbus Circle rally, and this is happening in Columbus Circle. This rally is coming after thousands of New York City students and teachers and staff flooded the streets of Manhattan yesterday. It's been an incredibly busy 48 hours in New York City as these protests continue. We are going to keep an eye on this shot. According to our resources on scene, a march is expected, so if we see on this live image that these protesters start to move, we will come back and show these images as the opportunities present themselves. For now, though, we are going to slide off of this shot. We're going to take another short break here close, but what we do want to let you all know before this happens is that
that are in their early 20s, and I just don't want to see anything happen to them either.
So right now, we're working to find out whether police know exactly why the shooting even happened.
Veterans who served our country are still facing threats now from scammers. Military families reported tens of thousands of fraud complaints last year alone. Today, the White House announced new efforts to fight back. Channel 2's Kirsten Garris is in Washington, D.C. with a closer look at the scams and what's being done to help.
These schemes aren't limited to phishing emails, phone calls, or fake websites. Veteran service organizations tell me scammers are even visiting their posts. From fraud to identity theft.
It is a very real issue. Veterans seem to be a prime target.
Veterans are facing countless scams. Joe Chanelli hears about many of them as the National Executive Director for American Veterans, also known as AMVETS for short.
We've had veterans who've lost pretty much their entire life savings at time.
A Federal Trade Commission report shows veterans, military personnel, and their families filed 93,000 fraud complaints last year alone. Those schemes cost them more than $414 million. Chanelli says it may be months before veterans realize they've been robbed by a scammer.
They're stealing a veteran's Social Security and their VA disability compensation at the same time. Suddenly they're in a homeless situation.
The Biden administration is now launching a new task force to help tackle this issue. It will work with veterans and military service organizations like AMVETS to raise awareness. This includes toolkits with information about scams involving healthcare, finances, housing, employment, and education.
We have 1,200 posts across the United States. That's 1,200 communities that we can bring that message to, and along with the other veteran service organizations that are doing the same thing.
The VA will also release videos outlining the different kinds of scams targeting veterans and their families. In Washington, Kirsten Garris, Channel 2 Action News.
Meanwhile, families will honor veterans with a series of events tomorrow. Some have been adjusted to account for the rain and the forecast that Brad keeps talking about. In DeKalb County, Dunwoody moved their ceremony from Brooks Run Park to City Hall. It's scheduled to start at 10 a.m. Roswell Park is scheduled to host a breakfast for service members in North Fulton County. That's at 8 a.m. In Cherokee County, Canton plans to hold its parade at 11 a.m. You can find events near you by going to WSBTV.com. And by the way, today, November 10th, is the Marine Corps' birthday, celebrating 248 years.
The Fulton County School Board won't need to hire a superintendent, at least anytime soon. This week, the board voted to extend its contract with current superintendent Dr. Mike Looney. That contract is expected to last until November 9th of 2026. Dr. Looney's new contract projects a 7-year tenure, which is rare for a superintendent in a large metro Atlanta school district. A taxi ride ends with a man losing his puppy. The search to find the dog and why the taxi driver says it's not on him.
The city of Atlanta is considering extending operating hours for bars. We break down the changes being discussed.
And as we head into the holidays, should you get a COVID-19 booster shot? What a leading Atlanta infectious disease specialist wants you to know before you celebrate with loved ones.
There is audio. Before we go to our next segment, let's listen in. Let's see if we can hear anything. And just to reset here, we do want to give an explanation as to what exactly you're looking at. It's a pro-Palestinian rally, as you can tell by all of those pro-Palestinian flags. A rally taking place right now in Columbus Circle in New York City. As we've been watching this image for the past roughly hour and a half, this crowd has only grown in size as the minutes have gone by. There was another large protest that happened in Midtown Manhattan just yesterday. Protesters flooding the streets of the Big Apple. These protesters are demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Sometimes we have even seen dueling pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli protests happening in the streets of New York City. But from our vantage point, streets of New York City, at least from our vantage point, nothing but pro-Palestinian flags. So, while we continue our coverage of this Israel-Hamas conflict, Secretary of State Antony Blinken in New Delhi, India, today, as he makes a swing around the world. We've seen him bounce around the Middle East. Now Blinken in Asia, making remarks today, speaking about the current status of this Israel-Hamas conflict. The breaking news earlier this week about the daily ceasefire, the daily 4-hour ceasefire that is going to be happening for humanitarian purposes in Gaza. That's going to be happening on the daily. Blinken's remarks coming into our newsroom just moments ago. Before we go to Blinken, we do want to mention that we are still on standby for this SAG-AFTRA event, where we understand a vote will be taking place. They're going to vote on the TV theatrical tentative agreement. We're not exactly entirely sure when this event will start. If the coverage warrants it, we will break out of Secretary of State Antony Blinken's remarks in favor of this event. But as for now, we don't exactly know when this will start or when we might see this tentative agreement be agreed to. For now, we are going to come back out to me so that we can toss to the Secretary of State's remarks. Again, Blinken speaking not only about the Israel-Hamas war right now, but also where it's headed. Here's his remarks.
Thanks for the help. Good afternoon. So we just had a very productive 2+2 session with Secretary of Defense Austin and our Indian counterparts. This builds on the important visit that Prime Minister Modi made to the United States, followed by President Biden's visit here for the G20. And we continue, India and the United States, to deepen our partnership, deepen our collaboration on everything from emerging technologies to defense to people ties, as well as our shared diplomacy to try to advance an Indo-Pacific region that's free, that's open, that's prosperous, that's resilient. We also discussed the crisis in the Middle East, and we appreciate the fact that from day one, India strongly condemned the attacks of October 7th. And as our joint statement makes clear, India and the United States stand with Israel against terrorism. This marks the last day of what's now been a 9-day trip of intensive diplomacy throughout the Middle East and now here in the Indo-Pacific. And along the way and at each stop in different ways, we've sought to advance a number of critical objectives, minimizing harm to Palestinian civilians and maximizing the humanitarian assistance that reaches them, working to prevent the spread of the conflict, focusing on getting hostages home, as well as getting American citizens and other foreign nationals out of Gaza, and working to set sustainable, durable conditions for genuinely lasting peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike. To that end, I've had conversations starting a week ago with the Israeli government about steps that can be taken to advance each of these objectives. And among those steps that we talked about more than a week ago were humanitarian pauses. These can advance all of the objectives that I just mentioned. We appreciate the fact that yesterday Israel announced 4-hour pauses with a 3-hour notice in specific areas, as well as 2 humanitarian corridors that will allow people to move more safely and freely, to get out of harm's way, and also to access assistance. These steps will save lives and will enable more assistance to get to Palestinians in need. At the same time, much more needs to be done to protect civilians and to make sure that humanitarian assistance reaches them. Far too many Palestinians have been killed. Far too many have suffered these past weeks. And we want to do everything possible to prevent harm to them and to maximize the assistance that gets to them. To that end, we'll be continuing to discuss with Israel concrete steps that can be taken to advance these objectives. We'll continue to focus relentlessly on getting our hostages home. We'll continue to focus on expanding humanitarian assistance that gets into Gaza and reaches people in effective ways. And we'll continue to focus on the steps that can be taken now to try to start to set the foundation for durable and lasting peace, which, as we've said repeatedly and believe, has to include 2 states for 2 peoples. With that, happy to take some questions.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Secretary. I think it was on Monday, but I'm not sure when you finished the Middle East part in Turkey, and you described all of what you just went through as works in progress. Obviously, you see that some progress, some tangible, concrete progress has been made, and some of those with the pauses. But are those enough? And then, secondly, what exactly is it that can be done now to set the stage for this durable, lasting peace, and in the more near term, the ideas that you put forward for the post-conflict structure of Gaza?
Thanks, Matt. Well, first, I think some progress has been made, and I just laid it out, but I was also very clear that much more needs to be done in terms of both protecting civilians and getting humanitarian assistance to them. And we have concrete plans, concrete things that we're working on that would do just that. And as I've said from the start, this is a process, and it's not always flipping a light switch, but we have seen progress. We just need to see more of it, and we need to maximize every effort to prevent Palestinian deaths and to advance the humanitarian assistance that's getting to them. In terms of the longer-term conditions that we need to see to try to get a real foundation for lasting peace and lasting security, because that's the objective for Palestinians and Israelis alike. I think there too we've made some progress. First, in trying to establish some basic principles that can guide us in that effort, including among them no forcible displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, no use of Gaza as a platform for launching terrorism or other attacks against Israel, no diminution in the territory of Gaza, and a commitment to Palestinian-led governance for Gaza and for the West Bank, and in a unified way. These and some other ideas that we put forward and that others share, I think can start to be the basis for what we need to do. But we've long been committed to two states. That was the announced policy of the administration when we came to office. When we came to office, the conditions certainly didn't look like they were ripe to advance that in the moment. We first needed to try to make sure that there was as much calm as possible, and then to try to build from there. And that's what we've been working on very resolutely for the last 2.5 years, including pushing back on the expansion of settlements, on illegal outposts, on demolitions of homes, on evictions of Palestinians, on the status quo for the holy sites, on violence being perpetrated by extremists in the West Bank. By the way, something else that we've been very focused on this past week or so. And we were working very much on that. We had important meetings in Aqaba and Sharm el-Sheikh to advance that, even as we were also working on the normalization agenda with Israel and Saudi Arabia, not as a substitute for a Palestinian state, but actually as a way to advance it. But now we've had the events of October 7th, the almost beyond the human imagination horror of October 7th. And I think that only reinforces us in our conviction and our commitment to durable and lasting peace, which again, we see through two states. So we've worked to start to establish some basic understandings, basic principles. A lot of work needs to be done on fleshing all of that out, and then eventually a lot of work's going to need to be done on getting back to the concrete elements of building two states. But as I've said from the outset of this past 9 days, we have to be focused on both at the same time, and we are.
Mr. Secretary, what was your message to Minister Jaishankar regarding the crisis and India-Canada relations? What progress did you make in convincing India to restore diplomatic immunity to Canadian diplomats? And if I may, going back to the Middle East, as Israel has moved into a new phase of war, have you seen them take the concrete steps you asked to reduce civilian casualties? What are those concrete steps? And what progress has been made towards increasing humanitarian assistance to the 400, 500 trucks a day that were coming into Gaza before the war began?
Thanks, Abby. So on India and Canada, these are two of our closest friends and partners, and of course, we want to see them resolving any differences or disputes that they have as a friend to both. We think it's very important that India work with Canada on its investigation, and that they find a way to resolve this difference in a cooperative way. But that really does go with Canada moving its investigation forward, and India working with Canada on it. And that's something that I've discussed with our Indian counterparts, including today. In terms of coming back to Gaza, again, as I said, we have seen progress in addressing some of the very important concerns that we have and that so many share about protecting Palestinian civilians, about getting humanitarian assistance to them. I've already outlined them, but I also said that much more needs to be done. So for the humanitarian assistance piece, we do have concrete, more than plans, we do have, I think, a concrete way forward that would allow more trucks to get in on a regular, sustained basis, as well as to make sure that there's an adequate supply of fuel so that, for example, the trucks themselves can be fueled up to distribute the assistance. Hospitals have what they need. Desalination plants have what they need. It's always a process, and moving from an understanding, moving from an agreement to implementation is what we're working on right now. As you know, Ambassador David Satterfield has been parked in the region, shuttling back and forth between the various parties that are necessary to get this humanitarian assistance expanded in a significant way. That includes, of course, Egypt, as well as Israel, as well as the United Nations, and some other countries that may have some ability to help. So we're very actively pursuing that. And I believe that, as I said, we not only have some clear understandings about what needs to happen, we're now in the process of implementing that. I think you'll see that unfold. And further, with regard to harm to Palestinian civilians, look, I think first what Israel announced yesterday will help. It will help in enabling people to get out of harm's way. It will help in enabling people to get greater access to humanitarian assistance. There are other steps that we've discussed with Israel that I discussed a week ago. I'm not going to detail them here. I can simply say that there is more that can and should be done to minimize harm to Palestinian civilians. Thanks. Thank you.
All right, so that was the end of Secretary of State Antony Blinken's remarks there. Ultimately, the Secretary speaking about a number of issues. We are going to take a quick commercial break. We're still keeping an eye on this SAG-AFTRA event where there could be a vote taking place to confirm the agreement that was tentatively agreed to. But we also want to talk about some of what has been going on with New York City Mayor Eric Adams. The mayor, his electronic devices being seized by the FBI amid a campaign investigation. That's breaking. That information coming into our newsroom earlier today. We are going to be joined by a reporter in New York. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to investigate that. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back into Live Now from Fox. I am your host, Austin Westfall, and to New York City we go for our next story, and it involves the mayor of New York City, Mayor Eric Adams. The FBI seizing Adams' phone and iPad earlier this week, just days after federal agents raided the home of his chief fundraiser. For more details on this story, we are joined by our friend Morgan Mackay. Morgan, we appreciate you joining us for this story. With more details on this, Morgan, she's with Fox 5 New York. She has been covering this story. Morgan, what can you tell us?
Austin, this is truly a stunning development in this case. FBI agents approached Mayor Eric Adams on the street Monday night, asked his security detail to step away, and then climbed into his SUV with him. There, they had a court-authorized warrant to seize his electronic devices. These devices were returned a few days later, but this is the first time that the FBI is directly touching the mayor in their investigation into whether Adams' 2021 campaign accepted illegal donations. So, backing it up, almost as soon as he got there, when news broke that the FBI raided the home of his top fundraiser, Breonna Suggs. Adams claims he did so to be there for the 25-year-old, but also later admitted that he never actually spoke with her that day. It was later revealed that the FBI is actively investigating whether the Adams 2021 campaign conspired with the Turkish government and others to funnel money into his campaign by using what's called straw donors. Adams has been to Turkey multiple times, and at least 2 of those trips were paid for by Turkish officials. He also admitted on Wednesday that he met with the president of Turkey here in New York City when he was borough president. Adams' campaign attorney, Boyd Johnson, today emphasized that Adams has not been accused of any wrongdoing, saying, quote, "The mayor immediately complied with the FBI's request and provided them with electronic devices." Adams also provided a statement saying, quote, "As a former member of law enforcement, I expect all members of my staff to follow the law and fully cooperate with any sort of investigation, and I will continue to do exactly that. I have nothing to hide." But Adams at first last week said he had not been contacted by the FBI, and then on Wednesday gave no hint that the FBI at that point had seized his devices. This is his chief counsel answering questions that same day on if he had been contacted.
You had asked if we're in touch at all with SDNY, and the answer is yes, of course we are. The mayor has publicly pledged his cooperation, and we've been in touch.
So I don't know if that soundbite played fully, Austin, but as you can hear there, that was a little far away from actually saying that they had been contacted. She said that this is also, that they had sort of reached out to the FBI in that case. So this is also not the first time that the Adams 2021 campaign has come under scrutiny. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office in July indicted 6 people who used to work with Adams on charges of conspiring to funnel illegal donations to the mayor's campaign. Austin?
Fox 5's Morgan Mackay joining us with the latest on that. We appreciate your reporting, Morgan.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to slide away for another quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more top stories.
Sorry, I couldn't see anything or hear anything, so I have no idea.
Welcome back into Live Now from Fox. I'm Austin Westfall. We do want to continue our coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict. We did lose our image of that rally happening in New York City. Right now, there is a major pro-Palestinian rally happening in the Big Apple. As soon as we get any live feeds of that event back, we will bring them to you if we get them. But for now, we are going to return to the United Nations. The United Nations Security Council is meeting right now to discuss what they call the Palestinian question. Ambassadors from several states around the world convening to discuss what's happening right now with this Israel-Hamas conflict and ultimately what their respective nations think about this conflict and perhaps some of the moves that they will make in the future relating to this war. We did hear from the Russian ambassador moments ago. We're going to play those remarks right now. Take a listen.
We wholeheartedly support the importance of convening of the UAE's initiative to convene a Security Council emergency meeting on the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. We thank the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, and the Director General of the Palestine Red Crescent Society, Marwan Jelani, for their briefings on the situation in the Palestinian enclave. We highly value the selfless efforts of the representatives of the WHO and all humanitarian colleagues who are working on the ground under exceedingly dangerous circumstances. The briefers today provided information about the devastating magnitude of the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, and this cannot but be shocking. In the Palestinian enclave, there is a real humanitarian disaster unfolding, a tragedy of global proportions. The Israeli airstrikes have fully destroyed or damaged nearly half of residential buildings and vital civilian infrastructure sites. Over the past day, 4 Palestinian hospitals were bombed. 18 of 35 hospitals in the Strip have completely ceased to operate. 35 buildings were destroyed, and another 165,000 were damaged. The list of buildings that have been destroyed or wounded are 221 schools, 42 UNRWA facilities, 7 churches, and 56 mosques. The leadership of UNRWA has reported that the victims of the bombings now include 101 staff of the agency. We are shocked and deeply outraged that the targets of the strikes are civilian objects, schools, hospitals, mosques, refugee camps. We emphasize that the deliberate strikes against civilian objects represents an egregious violation of international humanitarian law. Respect for IHL is an imperative. In all wars, there are laws. Any violence against civilians, the conduct of strikes targeting buildings, civilian infrastructure sites are categorically unacceptable. According to existing reports just this morning, the Al-Quds hospital, Al-Shifa, was struck, as was the Khalid bin al-Manida mosque and Ali Khwas mosque. And these mosques are located in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and this confirms the information that safe zones for civilians today simply do not exist in the Gaza Strip. The Strip has been enduring a brutal, complete blockade, as a result of which civilians are the main casualties. There's an acute shortage of medicine, food, fuel, hospitals lack beds. There's a lack of drinking water, which has spawned an acute worsening of the sanitary and epidemiological situation. The residents of the besieged area are receiving assistance from organizations including the Russian Federation, which is delivering humanitarian support to the population in the Gaza Strip today. On the 10th of November, the Russian Emergency Ministry has announced that it will send by plane to Egypt the 4th consignment of food and medicine. This will be 25 tons of food and medicine. Nonetheless, as we heard today from Dr. Tedros Adhanom and Marwan Jelani, despite the fact that the northern part of the convoy received humanitarian convoys, that is clearly insufficient to meet the colossal needs of the Gaza Strip. If meaningful measures are not taken to de-escalate, the consequences and fallout will continue to reverberate for decades to come. Mr. President, in the shadow of the tragic events in Gaza, there is the forgotten, volatile situation in the West Bank of the Jordan River, which has been consigned undeservedly to oblivion. And since the 7th of October, all major cities in the West Bank has seen an acute escalation of violence as a result of the operations of Israeli security forces and violent acts by settlers against Palestinian civilians, irrespective of what is happening in the Strip. The situation in the West Bank of the Jordan River in and of itself deserves close scrutiny by the Security Council. In clashes with Sahel units over the past month, 148 Palestinians died over the past month. For comparison, in the year 2022, according to UN data, 155 Palestinians died. More than 2,200 people have been wounded. Another 2,000 have been detained. The army is meting out collective punishment, the most significant component of which is the complete blockade of residential areas through the closure of all roads leading to it due to security concerns. Presently, access of the Palestinian population has been blocked to major transport arteries of the West Bank, and this has done significant damage to the local economy.
Austin Westfall here. You've been listening in to the Russian ambassador to the United Nations speaking at this UN Security Council meeting.